You may have heard of the massive Australian fires. Unfortunately, it's dwarfed another disaster that's threatening animals, the first eruption in 40 years of Mount Taal in the Philippines. PETA is at both, but it's the only group trying to save the hundreds and hundreds of animals under that active volcano in the Philippines. The situation from the rescue effort next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. Here we talk to the key players at PETA and the movement and ask them about how animal rights change their lives and how they stay motivated to make the world a better place for the animals. On today's episode, Mount Taal's eruption in the Philippines has forced the evacuation of more than 13,000 people. But companion animals were left behind, and the government has no plan to help them. A handful of PETA employees and volunteers are the only ones on the island trying to rescue as many animals that they can.
There's a logistical problem of if you start taking all the animals out of the evacuation zone, the area or immediately around the lake, we could potentially have 1,000 dogs here. And there's just a logistics problem of where we put 1,000 dogs. Right now, the safest thing is for us to continue to feed and water them. And water is potentially the bigger thing. Every day we hope for rain because we hope it will provide some fresh water. It's the best way to get the 14 kilometer radius. It's the best way to reach the most.
Jason Baker, PETA Senior VP in charge of PETA-Asia, is leading about a dozen PETA employees and volunteers who are braving the volcanic ash to save the animals on the island site of the Taal Volcano, about 60 miles south of Manila. The volcano erupted for the first time in 40 years on January 12th and reportedly sent ash spewing 9 miles high in the air. Before the volcano, PETA was already helping with the horse population on the island, but the eruption has created a different emergency. Some of the horses have been saved, but many hundreds of animals, including dogs and cats, have been abandoned as the volcano threatens to erupt again. Baker talked to us about the situation this week from the Philippines on the PETA Podcast.
Anyone who knows the Philippines knows at the best of times things are chaotic. So we're working on the fly, trying to figure it all out. But we know that a couple hundred horses are now safe on a senator's farm and are being treated by equine vets. We know there are still a bunch on the island, and the whole island hasn't been surveyed. We've got some drone guys who are out trying to figure that out. We know that many people have been sneaking back under the cover of night to get their animals out, to get horses out. So we were having the discussion today that maybe there's 600 horses still on the island, or maybe a bunch have gotten snuck out and we don't know about it. There are still plenty of animals on the island. The sad part is that the less they're worth in the marketplace, the less anyone cares about them. So dogs and cats aren't worth anything, so nobody went back to get any of them. And goats and ducks are worth very little, so nobody went back to get them either. So it's difficult, and we're basically the number one thing we're trying to do are get the animals off the island first, because on the island their only option is starvation and dehydration. So it's a rush. We've been laying food down there for the ones that we can't get. We brought horse feed, dog food, putting it out there, hoping to draw the animals in because some of these dogs are just they're not used to playing with humans. They're not friendly. So we're trying to get them off as quickly as we can. PETA itself has taken off, not including horses and pigs and cows. We have taken off about 140 animals. The situation is you can only bring about 15 animals at a time off. So we're packing carriers. We're using dog leashes on piglets and everything else we can to get everyone off. It's slow going. And then that's only the island. On top of it, you have this 14-kilometer radius around the volcano that is an evacuation zone. So you have, this area is traditionally a weekend place. It's a nice area. People have nice cottages with views of the lake. And when they were evacuated, again, here, the government did not allow them to take their animals. So we're just going down streets, and these houses are gated houses, and it's house by house, and they have 3 dogs, and they're left, and they have no water and no food. So right now we have 2 teams. Sometimes we have 3, and they're just literally going down the street, putting food and water out at every single house that has animals. Then they're trying to look in, and I saw one photo yesterday. Someone removed the glass from a window at someone's house and got in so that the dog inside could have food and water.
All right, so the people they were allowed to evacuate. The government didn't allow them to take their animals. What is the fate of these animals? I mean, aren't the people eventually going to come back again at some point, or what has the government said?
No, the government says that it's a no-go zone, that the people will never go back, and that they, while we are on the island, they drop leaflets over saying, "Get off the island, get off the island." They literally drop paper leaflets saying to get off the island. There is absolutely no government plan to go help any animal on the island whatsoever. None. And it's sad. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating. There's none. They sooner let them starve. And that's why we're there. And that's why we keep going back.
What is being done, say, at the government level to either urge the president, the Duterte, or the legislature to change that rule to allow people to go back in?
Yeah, it's the governor and it's the Coast Guard. There is politics involved. We had a 4-hour meeting with them on Saturday or Sunday. 4-hour meeting, and wish I could say it had gone better. We're trying to take the good news where we can find it. So that we're being able to get onto the island, we're taking as good news. They're not, we haven't been stopped from going onto the island, and it would be worse if they stopped us. But there is, we discuss it all the time, and the government has made very clear they have no plans to go onto the island. They don't care about the animals on the island. It's not a concern, and it's horrifying and embarrassing, and yeah.
Yeah, well, how about the Filipinos who were there, who were responsible for these animals? Aren't they saying anything? Aren't they trying to get back on the island?
No. I mean, they're not. In short, they're not. Yeah. There is rumors that go around every single day about some new thing that's going to happen, that the whole island is going to blow up, that toxic gases are going to come out of the top. Today, again, we were told that lava is creeping up and it could explode everywhere. It's every day. So there's a lot of fear going on. And, when the first day that the volcano exploded, rumors were going around Metro Manila that if you breathe in any of the ash, it's toxic and it can kill you. I was like, no, I can't. So there's fear. There's genuine fear amongst people. And the government is also saying, don't go. And they're not being lenient about it. And yeah, it's sad. It is truly sad. It is sad. Yeah.
Well, how many volunteers or how many PETA people are there actually doing something? Yourself, you said you brought your son out there to help, and you've got how many other people out there?
We've got about a dozen people every day. We're rotating people around, depending on the need of the day. So one of the things so feeding on the land is relatively easy, although even then, the requirements at the checkpoints to get in change almost daily. And so a couple of days ago, we had 4 cars going out there. The first one got in, the next 3 they wouldn't allow in. So again, it's Philippines, things change. We try to roll with the punches, talk to people, get things approved, change things around. One car didn't get let in because they said it didn't look official enough. It's like, we had cages and dog food here. How much more official do you want us to look? So we do what, we roll with the punches, and we go through and we feed and do it as quick as we can. I would say the community as a whole, the greater Philippine community, has come together like you wouldn't believe. Our office has had to rent 2 extra rooms in our building because we're getting so many donations from the public. We're bombarded with people who want to help. People aren't always available during the week, and they're not available all day. So it's a 3-hour drive to get to the rescue center. So we can't always take everyone. But there's a huge outpouring, and this is gonna be weeks, if not months, more of work. Well, the real question is, if this keeps up, you have this whole evacuation community around the island, and at some point, you can't just keep all these dogs in the backyard. At some point, they need to all start coming out. And it's the unknown is if the government is going to say in 2 days that the concern has gone down, the alert level has gone down, or are they going to keep it that way for 6 months?
Yeah. So how many animals total are we talking about who are there now and endangered? You have animals still in the evacuation area, and you also have these other animals who have been evacuated into this so-called safe zone outside of that evacuation area. Correct? Am I understanding correctly?
The animals outside of the safe zone are a few hundred, or outside of the evacuation zone are a few hundred. The vast majority are still on the island. There's a logistical problem of if you start taking all the animals out of the evacuation zone, the area or immediately around the lake, we could potentially have 1,000 dogs here. And there's just a logistics problem of where we put 1,000 dogs. So right now, the safest thing is for us to continue to feed and water them. And water is potentially the bigger thing. Every day we hope for rain because we hope it will provide some fresh water. It's the best way to get the 14 kilometer radius. It's the best way to reach the most.
In meantime, while all this is going on, there's still the real fear that this volcano, which has been pretty much dormant for 40 years, could go off again.
It is, and when I say that we're the only ones on the island, I mean we really are, and we walk on the island looking back behind us for fear that it's going to go off and that we will all be running to the boat, jumping in and trying to speed away. There's real fear every time we go on, but there's also real fear that those that are left on the island are suffering. There's one story that people I think would be interested in, and you can find it on our website, the PETA-Asia website. There was a dog that we had known for 2 years, and every time we would come with our veterinarians, this dog named Palakatik would come and nudge up against us and want as much love as she could get. She would follow us to the area that we set up our clinic. She would follow us when we leave. She just never left our side, always wanted love. She had someone who owned her, who left her when the evacuation happened. And so as soon as the volcano went off, many of us thought of her because she was just someone we knew so well for so long. And of course we want all the animals out there, but she's one that we knew so well. So when our first boat went out there, and that would be, I guess, a week ago today, our first boat and our first trip, we pulled up, got off the island, and one of the people that we were with called out to her, and through the ashes, she came running, recognized the voice. We had a cup of water for her, and she just started drinking as much as she could, and then started eating. And so to make a long story short, she got on the boat, went to the veterinarian, and this weekend I picked her up from the vet and brought her to my house and then took her off to her new forever home. So there were some exciting and happy stories that have come out of this.
But that's one story, and there's still dozens of other animals who are just, well, if you see them, if you can help them, they can be helped, but otherwise they're on their own, right?
Yeah, it is exactly that. And if the volcano goes off again, I don't know what their fate will be. There are plenty of dead animals that we walk by when we're going to get the ones who are not dead. So yeah, it's a race against time, and yeah, it's a race against time, and it is every boat trip that we take means more lives saved. Right now we're at a point where we're dealing with dogs and horses that are the least friendly, the ones who least want to come to us and least want to get on the boat. So it's making it the most difficult to get them, put them in cages or whatever, and get them on the boats. So yeah, even as this continues to happen, the work actually gets more and more difficult. But yes, it's urgent.
Yeah, tell me about the situation in terms of like walking around. What is the environment like? What is the ground like? What is the air like?
It depends on how the wind goes a little bit, and it depends on the volcano itself a little bit. One day, all of our staff and volunteers were complaining that they itched immensely, and someone there said they thought had something to do with it had something to do with the ash and what was coming out then, and everyone was dying for lotion and to take a bath, and but basically it is entirely gray. Everything is just covered in. We have only been to one side of the island. The one is the quickest for us to get to, and we're filling up boats, and we'll go to other sides other time. But it's a thick layer of ash over everything. When the volcano went off, it shook the island, so a whole bunch of buildings fell over. The island actually sank a little bit, so as a result, some of the pathways that we knew are now covered with water. So it's difficult to get around for people who knew the area, because you get disorientated pretty well. But even before the earthquake and before the volcano, they were not well-made buildings. They are not what people in America would think. I mean, they were shacks. They were pieces of wood with metal roofs, tin roofs. There wasn't much to them to begin with.
And people have just now been evacuated. They've left, and the government's just going to abandon this because the volcanoes, they just assume will take the island.
Yeah. 100%. It frustrates me. And, as I said, we try to see the bright side. We're getting animals off. It could be worse if we couldn't get animals off. So we're just going to continue to do it. We're going to continue to load them all up and bring them out. But yes, the government they don't have a plan to get the animals off. They don't have a plan when people are getting off to allow them to bring their animals. There are some very sad people who left their animals because they were afraid for their own lives, and I am not judging them. I understand their fear. So much of the sadness that's here could have been improved. We did when this first happened. We set up a Facebook account where people who needed rides and had animals, and people who could pick them up could link up, and that has helped to get many people out. But one of the things we're doing with this in the Philippines and around the world is trying to remind people to be ready in an evacuation. What is your plan? What is some people here didn't have options, but a lot of times people do. I remember in Katrina that there were dog carriers or cat carriers right next to the door in buildings where they had left their cat or dog. So there was a lot of things that could have been changed. So we're trying to remind everyone that to be ready, to have a leash around and some food and a carrier. So if you have to leave quickly, you can go.
Tell me about your volunteers and the PETA staffers who are helping, and how are they staying girded up to continue to do the work that they feel needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, we were just saying at the normally PETA is a constant go, push, and then this happens, and you figure out, how do I get that extra energy? And you do. But yeah, the first 3 days, I had 20-hour days trying to move everything around. So it is where there is exhaustion. The day starts around 5 with loading the cars in our office, and then it's a 2-hour drive or so down to the island, and then it's go. The sun here rises around 6 and sets around 6. So we try to maximize that 12 hours. We try to rotate our volunteers around so that we don't exhaust them and burn them out. We have experienced people who know how to handle it and know how to get through it. So those people tend to work longer hours just because they can and they're used to it. And yeah, we try to teach people what they can do on their own. We try to educate the community in general on where animals need food, and it's been great, frankly. The level that we've been overwhelmed of people wanting to volunteer, people willing to go into the evacuation zone and feed. It's great.
One of the things that I keep hearing this a lot, the stereotype about the Philippines and Asia, about I heard it the other day about people eating dogs and that kind of thing, and that they don't care about their companion animals. But I know that PETA has been responsible for really changing that attitude in the Philippines, because people are now seeing that their dogs, they're members of the family, that animals matter, and yet, it's hard to imagine that people would just leave their dogs, because I know that you've witnessed a great deal of caring by people of their companion animals there.
We have. I mean, it's not just, it's animal welfare and animal rights in general has skyrocketed in the Philippines and around Asia. We had last year in China, we had 250 million video views of our Chinese videos. We have a very successful campaign in Vietnam, and we're doing some great work in the Middle East, and there's some great activists there helping us make huge changes with the first convictions for cruelty to camels. It's all over Asia. There is, and it is mainly young people. Even in the Philippines, it's mainly young people. Cockfighting is just not seen as something that young people participate in, that they care about. They get that it's wrong. So yeah, the city I live in, Makati, is one of the most vegan-friendly cities in Asia. We see, volunteers at the shelter. We see people coming to adopt we have a regular rescue and adoption program in our office, and we see people, always lined up to take animals and to foster. There are stereotypes. And I was asked, you said you heard it this week. I heard it this morning. People were asking me if they were eating the dogs on Taal, and they were not. They were just community dogs in a poor area. And yeah, there is a stereotype, but for the most part, it's not real. Even in China, everyone knows about the Yulin festival, the dog meat festival, but it's really a small thing, and it's mostly kept going because the government can't look like they're bowing to international pressure. But it's such a rare thing, and young people all over the first sales in China are back to what they were in 2011. When you have an economy growing so fast, but yet the first sales are going in the other direction, that just says so much. And again, it has to do with young people. Hong Kong and Taiwan and Thailand, there's just so many great things happening with activists and with our investigations, and where people are just being educated and they're seeing the difference that they can make. And again, I look at today's young people and I think, wow, they really are getting it, and they really are changing attitudes, changing the economy. It's amazing.
Jason, just a few more questions. We talked mostly about these domesticated animals, the dogs and the cats, and we talked about horses. But what about the wildlife on the island? Is that a concern? Is that something you could even touch at this point, given your resources?
There wasn't much that we know of as far as wildlife. We have rescued a bunch of birds. And I think that the only reason they couldn't fly off was that they probably ate some ash and got sick. But we released one of them yesterday. So for the most part, wildlife isn't being affected, not like it has been in say, Australia from the fires there.
You mentioned Australia, and I was going to mention that next. Sometimes Australia is seen as a part of Asia, It's certainly in your neck of the world down there. But considering the massive damage, billions of animals lost in Australia, at least the Philippines and Taal specifically is kind of sort of manageable but unmanageable, right? I guess that's a bright spot.
People don't really know this, but we actually have a team in Australia right now sort of doing the same thing, going around to farms and to the paddocks, the fields, and looking for any animals that might have been caught in the fires and didn't get out or didn't get help. But the difference is, we're talking about Taal, which is this tiny little island where people are risking their lives. And then Australia, we're talking about, a place the size of the United States, these fields. And so while we're there, we're looking. But yeah, it's the crisis in Australia is pretty massive. And I think one of the things that we are trying to focus on a little bit is, while there was a huge death in wildlife, no one's really talking about all the food animals that also died. And there was chickens and cows and sheep who were on farms that just got taken over and wiped out, and they burned to death. And it's another part of that whole huge tragedy. 5,000 or 10,000, depending on what you read, camels were shot in northwest Australia, and they did that because they were worried about them drinking the water that was what was there, what they wanted to use for the cattle industry. So,
right. Even though you're in what seems like an untenable position there on the island of Taal in the Philippines, all things considered, it's not Australia. I guess that's the silver lining.
Yeah, I mean, what we always look at the positive.
Well, let's end this with a hopeful story. More hopeful stories like Palakitik, more stories of rescue that, when the times get tough and you see the ash and you have a hard time breathing, you think about this one great story of rescue that keeps you going. What would that be, Jason?
Oh, I mean, that would be, it's difficult to give you one. The faces of this cat that we saw yesterday, who I can only imagine the fear from this cat after a week on this island. And I just saw her and I thought, oh, thank God. And, there's this duck that we just sent to a new home yesterday. And I'm like, wow, you can tell that they're so scared. And they've had no options. And it's confusing because their normal routine died. Their normal routine went away. But we have 150 animals. And like, I started off this conversation, and I took my son in and I took him around the veterinarian's office and showed him all these different dogs and cats and how all of them are now going to have forever homes. And I think when you walk around there and you see these animals and you know where they're going, that it's a really inspiring and exciting story.
So Jason, tell me, what can listeners do? Can they write letters to the Philippine government? Can they urge the Philippine government to take some more humane action? What do you tell people outside the world who don't know about? I saw the picture of the smoke on the front page of the Wall Street Journal the other week, and it was just amazing seeing a guy in a boat looking at that plume of smoke, the volcanic ash. What do you suggest people do who are just stunned by the images from Taal?
The people should write the embassy in the U.S. and push for more action to be done. I don't hold a lot of hope in that. I have to say the thing that we need most now, and I hate to sound like your typical charity, but we need donations. Go to PETA-Asia.com/Taal. Go to the PETA-Asia website. All the donations from there. We're literally hemorrhaging cash to pay for boats and cars and trucks and everything. So it is currently our number one need. So that's just an economic reality of what we're doing. At the same time, people should think about how this could affect their community in the future. Write a letter to the editor, to your local paper, and just say, I was thinking about Taal, and I was thinking about what happens in this area. And I hope people are thinking about how they would be prepared to take their animals out. It's going to happen somewhere else, some other time, and people need to be ready for it. And they never fails to amaze me how people are not. And so if this can be used to inspire someone's local community to have a carrier and a leash by the door at all times, to remember that don't take your television, take your dog instead, or I don't mean television, but don't think you're going to come back tomorrow, because you might not.
All right, Jason, spell out where people can go on the web, Facebook page, URL. Where can they go?
Sure. You can go to, I think the best thing where there's two areas. There's PETA-Asia, PETA-Asia.com. And you'll see our donate page there and everything. It's the easiest, and we're regularly updating our blog. You can go there now and see a bunch of the animals that we rescued. And then for the instant stuff, for the things that are like, right now we are on our way to the island, go to our Twitter account. Just go to Twitter and search PETA-Asia. And that's you really literally get moment by moment some gripping stories, and you hold on to your seat and try to figure out if they're coming back or who's coming back. I am literally waiting that any second now I will have an update that they are leaving the island and which animals are on it. I expect maybe we'll have about 30 animals today.
Well, Jason, a tremendous effort that you and the other PETA members are putting out there in Taal, saving lives, saving animals. And please take care of yourself, be safe, and we'll try to make sure that people understand how urgent this is and how important this is to try to keep this effort going, because if PETA doesn't do it, no one else will.
It's true. Thank you. It's true. I wish it wasn't, but it is a reality. Nobody else will if we weren't there.
Jason Baker, Senior VP of PETA-Asia. Check out our show notes for links to how to contribute to the effort there, or go to PETA-Asia, that's PETAASIA.com, to help the effort. And you can Twitter at PETA-Asia, that's PETAASIA, to get the latest on what they're doing to save those hundreds of animals on Mount Taal. And that's our program. You can contact us at PETA.org. You can find me on Twitter at Emil Amok, that's EMILAMOK, or on ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog, or my website, amok.com, AMOK.com. Incidentally, I'm doing my new one-man show, Emil Amok, Married to PETA and Other Love Stories. It's my own animal rights journey through the animal kingdom. It even mentions the Philippines. So check it out. It's in San Francisco at the Potrero Stage, February 1st and 6th. It's my Spalding Gray imitation. Go to AMOK.com for details. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Our music, provided by Carbonworks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.